The first rule of coming home was to not look at him. Not really looking was dangerous looking was a confession. Had repeated the rule to myself. Fourth, entire. Sakawa drive, a frantic man turned to the drone of the highway. Don't look at his hands, don't. Look at Hismith, don't look at his eyes when Hismith looking at you. But I broke that rule, all three parts of it, in the first 10 seconds. I shattered it the moment high upon the front door. Chloe, his voice was the same, just the same. A low, steady rumble that vibrated through the floorboards and straight up my spine, settling somewhere deep in my chest. It was the voice that had calmed my childhood nightmares and lectured Methro, my teenage rebellions. No, it just felt like a different kind of trouble. Stood there, framed by the doorway against the fading afternoon light, a silhouette I knew better than my own Athon. I managed my voice, a thin red-eye thing. He looked bigger, or maybe I had just gotten smaller in the 5 years I'd been away. College, a new city. A life I had painstakingly built brick by brick to be separate from this house, from him, had somehow managed to shrink me. He wore a simple black t-shirt that stretched across his chest and shoulders, the worn fabric hinting at the solid form beneath us. Jeans were faded and stained with a bit of grease near the knee. He looked it like he always did, like a man who worked with hands who could fix anything that was broken, except a suspected fourth charged splintering thing that had been growing between us for years. Urestering, sped. Not as an accusation, but as a quiet observation. A small, knowing smile played at the corner of his lips, and it made Mr. Mac clench. No, I'm not. I lead for sing a lightness I didn't feel. I'm just taking in the old homestead. It looks exactly the same. Gaze flickered past him to the familiar curve of the staircase. The scent of lemon polish and old books that always clung to the air in the entryways. Things don't change. He stepped aside, holding the door wider. His arm brushed my shoulder as I walked it past, and the contact was like a lit match to dry, kindling a brief, sharp hiss of heat that made me flinch. I hurried inside, dropping my suitcase with a thud that felt unnaturally loud in the silence. Your room's ready. Figured you'd want it the way you left it. I wanted to tell him. That was the problem. Everything was the way I'd left it, including the suffocating tension that felt like a permanent resident in this house. The photographs on the mantelpiece were Adameline of my life, with him as the constant on my first day of kindergarten. A bopped smile on my face as I clung to his hand. Me at my middle school graduation, looking awkward in a too-big gown while he stood behind me, his hands resting protectively on my shoulders, was in every chapter the steady guardian who had taken me in when I had nowhere else to go, the man who had raised me, and somewhere along the lines had blurred, twisted into something terrifying and thrilling that neither of us ever dared to name. Later that evening, the house settled into its familiar nighttime rhythm, the low groan off the pipes, the distant bark of a neighborhood dog, the ticking of the grandfather clock in the hall. It was a symphony of nostalgia that did little to soothe the frantic beat of my own hearted, unpacked in a daze, the clothes from me city apartment looking alien against faded floral wallpaper of my childhood bedroom. Dinner had been acquio, stilted affair. We talked about my degree, my job prospects, the weather, a mini field of safe, impersonal topics. Butonder every word. The real conversation was happening. It was in the way I kept me eyes glued to my plate, the way he cleared his throat before asking a question, the way we both moved with a hyper-awareness, careful not to let our hands brush when reaching for the salt. No. I found him in the living room, bathed in the cool, flickering light off television. He wasn't watching Ethoff. His gaze was distant, fixed on something far beyond the screen. A half-empty glass of amber liquid sat on the coaster beside him. He looked tired, tillings around his eyes, deeper than I remembered, or maybe it was just the wheat of all the things we couldn't. Sai hovered by the doorway, my arms crossed tightly over my chest. Tough day at the shop? I asked, my voice cutting through the canned laughter of the sitcom hell, up startled as if he hadn't heard him approach. He scrubbed a hand over his face, the Rasp of his stubble loud in the quiet room, the usual fighting with the transmission that has a death wish. He took a slow sip of his drink. It's good to have you home, Chloe. The house has been too quiet. You always say you'll like the quiet. I countered, moving further into the room, perching on the arm of the sofa opposite him. I thought I did. He admitted, his eyes finding mine. In the dim light, there was a raw honesty in his gaze that stole the air from my lungs. Turns out there's a difference between quiet and empty. Wes sat in that loaded silence for a long moment. The space between us felt Botham's, an infinitesimally small could smell. The faint scent of whiskey in his breath mixed with the familiar smell of sawdust and motor oil that always clung to him. It was the scent of my entire life, and it made me feel a dangerous cocktail of comfort and longing. Is it weird? I finally whispered, unable to bear the weight of silence any longer. Me being back here. He turned his body slightly, giving his full attention. The simple movement felt significant. Delibertino, it's not weird. He paused, his jaw working for a moment. It's a lot, but it's not weird. I wasn't sure if I should come back. I confessed, the words tumbling out before I could stop them. After graduation. I mean, I could have found Assablet, stayed in the city. Why wouldn't you come home? His question was soft, but it landed like keystone in my gut. There it was, the thing never talked about. The reason my last few visits from college had been brief, frantic weekends filled with feigned cheerfulness. Reason I had started dreading the holidays. I don't know. I lied, picking out a loose thread on the arm of the sofa. Life gets complicated. He gave a short, humorless laugh. It was a broken sound. Tell me about it. He drained his glass, ice clinking against the sides, and set it down with a heavy fine allude. Should get some sleep. You've had a long day. It was a dismissal, a clarisinal. That the conversation was over, but I didn't move. I couldn't. It felt like my feet were nailed to the floor. I watched him. Watched the tense line of his shoulders, the way his hand wascled into a fist on his knee. He was fighting a battle, and I was the battlefield. Ethan, I said his name, Borrelia breath. He closed his eyes as if my voice caused him physical pain. Don't hest. His voice strained, but took a step closer anyway. Then another is stopped in front of him, standing between him and the television. His eyes open, knees low, and he had to tilt his head back to look up at me. His pupils were dark, dilated in the low light, and they were filled with a raw, unguarded emotion that made my whole body ache. It was a maelstrom of loneliness and memory, and a desperate wanting hunger that I recognized because I felt it too. Hell, it is nipped a hand slowly, as if moving through water. I thought he was going touch my face, and my breath caught in my throat in anticipation, but his fingers stopped hovering in the air just inches from my cheek. It was a gesture of such profound restraint that it was more intimate than any touch. Chloe, he whispered again, and this time his voice was rough, ragged, go-tobed. I fleetly turned and walked out of the room on trembling legs, not looking back. I didn't stop until I was safely behind my broom door, my back pressed against the wood, my heart hammering against my ribs like a trapped bird. What were we doing? We did. It felt like we were standing on the edge of a cliff, and the only thing stopping us from falling was the sheer force of his will. The next day, the tension was a third person in the house. I sat with us at the breakfast table, Athic's suffocating presence. We moved around it and each other with a painstaking choreography of avoidance. I focused on my coffee, he on his newspaper, the rustle of the pages filling fizzlings. I decided to face the beast. Hidden, or at least circle it from a different direction. I found him in Thegridge later that morning, a place that was his sanctuary. Air was thick with the smell of gasoline and metal. He was leaning over open hood of an old Mustang, his back to me, the muscles in his arms flexing. Ash tightened something with a wrench, need a hand. And I asked, trying to sound casual, like the girl who used topasm tools as a kid. Not the woman who had nearly come apart under his gazette night before. He stiffened, his holders going rigid before he slowly straightened up, wiping his greasy hands in a rag. He turned his expression carefully neutral. I'm good, just trying to convince this old girl to run against is beautiful, I said, running a hand over the dusty fender. Always loved the Sony. She stubborn fights me every step of the way. He looked from the car tome, and for a second I thought he was talking about more than just the machine I lingered pretending to be interested in. The array of tools neatly organized on the wall, I was thinking maybe Oo could start looking for a job. Around here, just for a while, save up some money before I figure out my next move. You want very still here? He asked, his voice flat. Yeah, why not? It's cheaper than Thessity. My excuse sounded flimsy even to my own ears. We both knew why. I was adjusting it. It was a test, a way off saying, I'm not running away this time. What? Are you going? To do about it, he walked over to the workbench's back tome again and started cleaning. Part with meticulous, almost punishing focusy. Don't think that's a good idea. Chloe, I pressed my voice sharper than intended. Are you trying to get rid of me? He slammed the part down on Thorkench, the metallic clang echoing in the garage. He spun around and the mask vase gone. His eyes were blazing with frustrated fire. Yes, he snapped the word, cracking like a whip. No. Ha, I don't know to it. What do you want? From me, I want you to stop acting like I'm a ghost. Is shout back my own control finale shatterings. Looking through me, stop talking tone like I'm some stranger you have to be polite to just talk to me. To me. Hughes talked towards me, closing the space between us until he was towering over me. Had to crane my neck to look at him, my heart pounding with a mixture of fear and exhilaration. You want me to talk to you? He growled, his voice a low, dangerous vibration. All right, let's talk. Let's talk about how every time I look at you, I feel like I'm breaking every promise ever made. Let's talk about how Eva spent the last 5 years praying you'd stay away, and the last 24 hours dreading the moment you'd leave again. His hands came up to grip my arms, his fingers digging into my flesh, not with anger, but with a desperate intensity, as if he were holding on for dear life. Is that what you wanted to hear? Is that real enough for you? Tears welled in my eyes, blurring his face. I couldn't speak. All the air had been punched out of me. His expression softened the anger draining way, to be replaced by a look Afra found anguish. God, Chloe. E-gaze dropped to my mouth, and the world seemed to stop. The garage, the car, thesmal of gasoline, it all faded away until there was nothing but the inches between us. He was going to kiss me. I knew it. I saw the surrender in his icy, slight parting of his lips. I leaned on my own body, acting on a will of its sound, a deep primal need that had been buried for years, but the kiss never came with. A ragged groan that sounded like it was torn from his very soul. He released said and stumbled back, hitting Thorkench with his hip. He ran both hands through his hair, his chest rising and falling rapidly. I can't, he choked out, not looking at me. I can't do this, Cethon. No, he said, holding up a hand. Toast taught me. He finally looked at me, and his eyes were full of a terrible, resolute clarity. I can fix engines. I can rebuild transmissions. I can put anything broken back together, but I can't fix this. If will it break? We can't fix this. He was right. We both knew he was right. This wasn't a broken part that could be replaced. This was the foundation, and if it cracked, the whole house would come down. You need to go, said, his voice flat and devoid of emotion. Now it wastes. Voice he used when he was making a decision he knew would hurt, but one that had to be made. What I whispered, the single word, a plea, not today, not tomorrow. But soon he clarified his gazoon wavering. Find a job, get an apartment in the city, somewhere else, anywhere but here. Yokant, stay here. Chloe and I don't think I can either. If you do, it was the cruelest kindness he had ever shown me. He was setting me free by exiling me. He was protecting us by shattering my heart. I didn't argue. I just nodded, a single jerky movement. The tears I'd been holding back finally fell, tracing hot paths down my cold cheeks. I turned and walked out of the garage, leaving him standing there amidst the ghosts of old cars and the wreckage of what we could never be. That was 3 years ago. I took his advice. I moved back to the city, got a job in a graphic design firm, and built a life for myself. A real one this time. We didn't talk much. He sends a card for my birthday, a simple store-bought one with his name signed in his familiar strong script. I hear about him through the sporadic phone calls I make to check on How's he's doing well, the shop is busy. He's still fixing broken things. Late at night when the city is quiet, I think about that week. I think about the weight in the air, the desperate look in his eyes, the feeling off his hands on my arms for a long time. The memory was a sharp stabbing pain, a constant reminder of a door that was slammed shut in my face. But time has a way of sanding down the sharpest edges of our pain, leaving bend something smoother, more understandably realize. Now that what he did in Thackridge wasn't an act of rejection, it was an act of profound agonizing. Love he saw fire. We were starting and knew it would consume us both, burning down not just our future but the entire his story thought had made us who we were. He chose to walk into the cold to bear the quiet ash of loneliness rather than let Uspath be destroyed by the warmth he Medethi sacrifice. Fix the one thing that was truly broken our trajectory by steering Usanto different paths, and in that choice, in that painful selfless act, he gave me a future even if it wasn't the one my heart foolish la desperie wanted. Thank you for listening to our story. If you enjoyed want to hear more tales of complex emotions and difficult choices, please consider subscribing to our channel. Your support allows us to keep bringing these narratives to